What's hanging, my groovy dudes? Ready to chillax and hang 10 and be groovy? I can't do this. It's too...
No, wait, stop.
No. But yeah, the 1970s in America were an interesting time. But there are also some cool things that came out of this time period. Probably one of the biggest movements of the decade was the LGBT plus movement. For those of you who don't know what that stands for, it means lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, and the plus is for any other sexuality or gender identification. Basically, it's for anyone who's not straight. Before the 70s, gay culture had been repressed by the conservative intentions of the 30s and 40s. However, this all came to a head in 1969 with the Stonewall riots, and soon after that, gay culture seemed to explode. One of the major outlets for this new representation was the media, and this includes all kinds of things like books, TV shows, music, TV news, and published articles, and movies. In just a 10-year span, gay people became more proud of their sexualities and embraced them, creating a rich and fascinating culture that continues to be cultivated to this day. One of the oldest forms of media that we'll start out with is books. Before 1970, there had already been a handful of books and other written works published that had to do with homosexuality, as well as a few authors that never really said they were gay, but everyone pretty much knew they were gay. But once 1970 hit, gay literature became more prominent, and we started getting books like The Frontrunner, Dancer from the Dance, The Best Little Boy in the World, The Wild Boys, and probably one of the more well-known books from the time period, Ruby Fruit Jungle. Written by Rita Mae Brown and published in 1973, many people consider this to be one of the best books to introduce and portray lesbianism to the 70s, as well as a classic coming-of-age and coming-out story. Though the book has been critically acclaimed, there have been some issues with the main character, Molly Bald, and some commentary on the interpretation of butch lesbians. At one point in the novel she says, "What's the point of being a lesbian if a woman is going to look and act like an imitation of a man? If I want a man, I'll get the real thing, not one of these chippies. The whole point of being gay is because you love women." To put it simply, it hasn't aged well. The book doesn't do justice for a diversity of gender expression, and it doesn't particularly excel at representing race and family either, though all of these ideas were very common for the time it was written, so take it more as a historical account rather than as an example of modern views on gender and sexuality. Now, one of the biggest and most influential pieces of media is one that everyone should know: the movies. Movies, 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 movies. What's not to love about them? They've practically changed American society and have become one of the major characteristics of our culture. So, when a movie has a gay character or gay themes, it's a pretty big deal. This can be said for the 1970 film The Boys in the Band, which focused on all gay characters, and is one of the first American films to do so. The film itself was originally a play from 1968, written by Mark Crowley and run off-Broadway. The story is about a group of friends who come together to celebrate one of their friends' birthday. But things go south once a straight guy shows up to the party. Not only was it the first of its kind to show gay people on the big screen, but it also allowed a glimpse into the darker aspects of LGBT plus culture. It's not all positivity and rainbows. It doesn't sugarcoat things about homophobia and the prejudices within the community. One of the most famous lines from the film is, "Show me a happy homosexual and I'll show you a gay corpse." It's filled with angst and negativity, and because of that, it wasn't originally received well upon release, especially by the gay community. Many thought it gave bad stereotypes about how gay people were, and the characters weren't particularly likable. But it still changed everything. Not only did it show just how damaging it could be to have to constantly hide who you were, but it also acted as a starting point for other representation on any screen. Because of this movie, we got other films like Cabaret and Sunday Bloody Sunday. As stated in a film review in Time magazine, if the situation of the homosexual is ever to be understood by the public, it will be because of the breakthrough made by this humane moving picture. Speaking of the screen, TV was also a thing that happened. Ah, yes, the mass media machine. Another major player for influential outlets on American culture, TV also got a gay first in the 70s. In 1975, Norman Lear created a short series on ABC called Hot L Baltimore, based off an off-Broadway play of the same name. The thing that makes this show special is that it was the first time a gay couple was presented on network television, and though the show itself didn't earn stellar reviews, it was still a huge step in LGBT plus representation. Lear also went on to work on the sitcom The Jeffersons, where one episode features a transgender character. Another sitcom worth mentioning is 1977's Soap, which showed the first gay dads on television. Now let's get away from the screen, so we can focus on the radio instead. Practically everyone knows how iconic the music from the 70s is. Well, practically everyone knows what disco is, so they've got a basic understanding of the music style of the 70s. Besides the fact that the original audiences for disco were gay African-American clubgoers, many influential recording companies and artists grew from the decade. Two prime examples of extremely gay singers are Freddie Mercury from Queen and Mr. David Bowie himself. Though there's been a lot of controversy on Mercury's sexuality and whether he was gay or an extremely flamboyant straight man over the years. He was bisexual! There hasn't been much argument over Bowie's sexuality. Why? Because, well, he outright said it. From a 1972 issue of Melody Maker, he clearly says, "I'm gay, and always have been, even when I was David Jones." It's been said by many that Bowie was a revolutionary in gay music, as many of his songs contain LGBT+ themes in some way, shape, or form. He even had a hand to play in the popularization of the disco craze. One of his hit songs, John and Molly Dancing, is filled with hints towards pansexuality and wasn't even released in the US until 1976 due to it being too out there. One of the most important factors in music isn't just the songs or the musical artists. After all, most of them wouldn't have even gotten their start without recording companies. One of the biggest music record companies out of all of these was established by lesbian feminists in 1973, named Olivia Records. Pretty quickly, this company became the leader in women's music. They managed to sell thousands of albums, and concerts for their recording artists were packed. Such artists include Meg Christian, Chris Williamson, Teresa Troll, Linda Tillery, etc., etc., etc. Not only were they record-breaking, it led to the creation of many other women's music companies that spread all over the US, leading to women's and lesbian music becoming increasingly popular. What? Did you see I'm reading the paper? Which is another influential form of media. Before the craze of online news and Fox News, all people had as a form of media was the newspaper. Though, of course, there was TV in the 70s, newspapers were still very prominent in everyday life, instead of just piles of paper that sit on your table until you just throw it in a recycling bin. But as evidenced in the New York Times' 1979 article, the LGBT+ community managed to make its way into the papers. Titled Brown Meets an Oregon Homosexual Activist by Wayne King, it details how Governor Edmund G. Brown Jr.'s presidential campaign went to meet with the gay rights group called the Portland Town Council. Brown went on to address the group, stating that human rights begin at home, and that every citizen, whatever their age, whatever their color, whatever their sexual orientation, is entitled to the full rights of American citizenship in public, in government, in private enterprise. This showed that a politician was willing and accepting enough to include what was, at the time, a pretty liberal ideology into his campaign. Additionally, along with the Portland Town Council, there were hundreds of other LGBT+ groups across the country. Before events at Stonewall, less than 50 organizations for gay and lesbians existed, but by 1973 that number shot up to over 800 groups in the U.S. Many members of these groups went on to contribute so much more to create representation in the media, like publications, presses, and so much more. Things are going strong for the gay movement. Yeah, there are still a bunch of problems with conservatism and homophobia, but things seem to be improving. Huge steps are being taken towards gay rights and representation, and it was all amazing and beautiful and just so much progress! And then came the AIDS epidemic. People immediately shifted blame onto gay people, mainly because they were the majority of victims being affected. All the progress made seemed to just be put on some kind of back burner. Sure, there was still gay culture present in the media, but the enthusiasm from the 70s seemed to lose its spark. But despite all the roadblocks and barriers, honestly, look how far we've come from then. Now we have shows like Steven Universe, Sense8, Orange is the New Black, Modern Family, Supergirl, movies like Brokeback Mountain, Rocky Horror Picture Show, Milk, even musicals like Rent, The Falsettos, Kinky Boots, and off-Broadway productions like Bear. All these present gay themes head-on, and the conservatism in the media is slowly decreasing. We even have legalized gay marriage. Compared to the 70s, we're practically light years ahead of where we were. And it's all thanks to that important decade. Catch you later, groovy dudes.